Hey everyone, this is Ben back with you in the Midwest Model Shop. So if you're watching this video right now, one of two things happened. Either you're watching back on my normal channel and everything's kind of the way you are used to, or you're watching this on a brand new channel that I had to start over again. Long story short, my channel was hacked last week, or whenever this time frame was from this video posted, and taken over by some like cryptocurrency type of people. It's a thing they do. They hack the channel, and then because they see how many subscribers you have, and then they just create a new video and shoot it out to all of you folks. That's their idea anyway. Okay, besides that though, we're gonna go ahead and get into this build. This video is actually part one of two. When I did all this originally, it ended up being about 24 hours of build time. I actually tried to keep track of it this time, and I got it all edited down sort of, and basically I wasn't even done yet. I was well over an hour, probably close to an hour and a half of material. So what I did is I broke it up into two parts. So this is part one. We're going to go ahead and cover the forward funnel and basically all that assembly, and then going up into the radar, the Mark 38, and then the SK2 radar. And yeah, we'll go get into that part of the build. Anyway, that's the explanation of what's going on. Let's go ahead and jump into the build. Alright, so here we go. First order of business is to get all the big main parts glued together so that I can work out all the seams and things like that. Then we go ahead and get our photo etch stencils installed, and then hopefully you'll see here that we've got some holes already drilled out right there that we'll put the ladder rungs on. Basically, there is an absolute ton of work that needs to be done, and I'm gonna have to do it just kind of in quick little sections like this, otherwise it's gonna take a month to get through this video. So we'll start with the center part of the funnel, and then we'll add our little pieces that go like this, and then there's a part on top of there, and then this goes on top of there, and anyway, it all gets built up. So we're gonna start with the middle of the whole thing and work our way out. Alright, let's get some PE work done. Alright, quick little update from the start we got on the parts over here. We've got some pieces here painted up and ready to go that actually need to be installed before the funnel can go together. But then we've got all these pieces over here that are part of the funnel, and I had this little epiphany. Basically, all of these need to have the weather deck blue inside of them on the bottom, and basically I need to paint that now before I put anything together. So I've cut all these parts out, I've cleaned them all up. I started with a brush on these two, and that didn't work out. I'm gonna take them over and airbrush the weather deck blue onto the bottom of all these, and then when that's done, I'm gonna let them dry good and long so that they're set up just fine. I'm gonna come back with Tamiya masking tape and mask off the deck, the whole area, which is gonna be very time consuming. But it's totally going to be worth it, because when we're done, all of these little areas that should be weather deck blue that you're walking around on and you're seeing from the top, they will be the right color, and I don't have to worry about getting the light blue, the French light blue gray color on the weather deck blue and having issues getting everything to work out right. So this is turning into a lot of prep work and moving ahead before we can get real progress done. So yeah, there we are. Okay, there's our little pile of airbrushed parts. We're just gonna let them sit for forever to dry up and cure, and then I'll start the tedious process of masking them up so then we can start assembling things. Alright, so we have this area right here before the funnel drops down in here, and there's a bunch of like walls that go in, and so basically you're gonna have to put this together ahead of time. This just basically fits right into place. We'll drop a bunch of glue down behind it up against the wall. Then we have this piece that basically drops down into this hole that you can't see, and I'll show you that here. Alright, so here's the back side of that wall that we just put up, and then we got this piece that just, there's a hole for it, and it's odd because there's no like positive space for it to really connect to, I guess. I don't know. And then
We have another piece that drops down like this. There is a slot for it. It goes like that, and then it just sandwiches together. So let me get this part turned around in the middle here, facing the right way. So this has to happen like so, and there's a piece of photo etch that goes on the front of this. Anyway, both of these little boxes have to be made up on both sides, so I'll do that, and then the funnel fits snugly between the two, like that. So yeah. Alright, hopefully this makes sense if you couldn't visualize what I was doing before. It's this little boxed area gets dropped into place, and there's the other one over here on the port side. The issue is the fit. There's a little bit of a gap right in there. When this is all said and done, no one's probably going to see it, but there is not a gap on the front side right here, and dropping this down in here is like precarious. I've already had a lot of trouble with it before, and I even tried sanding off some of these edges right here. So I have to figure that out though, because this whole thing does need to drop in. I guess I just pinched it a little bit and I got it to drop down. I'm gonna have to drop this whole thing down in place with all of the stuff on it, or I need to build it in place. I'm not sure. We're gonna have to think about this for a minute. Alright, as I'm putting this together, I just basically started dry fitting pieces to make sure that I can drop this whole big thing in. And we have these gun tubs right here. There's two on each side, and there's a slot basically right here, and then it slides into place like so. And then the idea is that the whole thing's going to straddle this little area right here when you drop it into place. But before I show you that, see the bottom here? We'll get it to focus in. There's this lip. Those of you building this model, you're gonna find basically that there's a little step that comes down here, and then this backside area right here, it comes down another 1/8 of an inch almost. It's a lot. And when it does that, this doesn't fit in here. It goes, basically it stops. There's just no way it's gonna go in. And I double checked everything as best as I can, and it's like, no, this is supposed to be pre-installed, yeah, and have it bump all the way up just like that, and then the idea is the whole thing will drop, this whole thing will drop straight down, and if you do that, it's going to end up cocked up crooked like that. So you'll need to clean that part out. And let me show you, I'm talking about up on top here. And I knocked off my little railing, but that's alright. That's the area we're talking about, is right here. You're supposed, these gun tubs are supposed to straddle either side of this as it drops straight down. That's, I don't know how that's gonna go together very well without causing issues, so I am going to have these be removed, and I'm gonna save them until after this whole thing's in place. Then I'll slide them into position, because that'll make this easier to install. Now I just got to sort out what ends up on top of here to make sure the whole thing will drop into place safely. Alright, I'll get into explaining things really, I guess, later, but got to start gluing some stuff together here, otherwise we're not going to have anything. I decided to paint this up, and once it's in place, I'll go ahead and mask off the deck area that we don't want painted when we get the light gray on here. But basically this deck goes on above, right, like so. We'll get that lined up, get this lined up. There's another deck that goes in down here, but we're gonna have to save that to the end, otherwise we won't be able to put this whole thing together. Make sure that lines up well. And there is a piece of photo etch that goes on the edge of this on both sides, but I'm going to save that until I'm ready to put the railing on over here. Otherwise I'm concerned that it'll get damaged in my handling. Basically, I do want to point out what I am doing right here is making it so that I will always be able to hang on to this down here at the base, even though it's going to get kind of top heavy, which will make handling easier until the last possible moment when things get to be really difficult to show due to the amount of detail that's going to be on here. Okay, now that that's together, we can mask off the deck area so that we can prepare the next layers for paint. Alright, so I've glued chunks of this thing together and masked off all the areas that I don't want to get painted and won't be a problem later on. Then this thing's got to go on here, and obviously there's a bunch of holes that filler holes that need to be filled in because you'll potentially see them later on, because this thing goes like this and gets stacked way up here. Anyway, yeah, at this point I'm still doing a whole lot of work trying to figure out what is the best thing to do to keep the assembly process modular so that I don't run into any issues basically where I have to like touch stuff that's got photo etch on it. So like over here, this is the little funnel area, and it's gonna go right like so, just like that. But there is a ton of photo etch that goes right here, and this whole thing needs to get masked and painted black. And then we've got this ring, I got to put a bunch of photo etch in it, and then once it's together and painted, you know, I don't want to touch anything there, but basically I can assemble this whole thing like so, and I should be able to then come back with this finished parts, drop it into place, and then there's a piece that goes right in here for the, I don't know if this might not CIC, this is like the battle bridge area, I'm not sure. Someone will correct that statement in the comments, and then someone will correct that person, and then 15 other people will correct me, which is fine. So that's the idea, is to keep it like so. And I think at this point, like, I'm confident enough that enough of this is together that right in here, see my tiny little holes, I could put my little photo etch ladder rungs in there so that you could get up here to this gun director. So we'll put those in and decide. Actually, I might actually paint this whole thing at this point. We'll see here. And then right here, there's a little piece of photo etch. Another one of the ship's bells goes right here. We'll save that from the Pontos kit until we're done. So yes, moving along. Alright, there are our little ladder rungs installed. Now I just have to do that again on this side, and we'll be ready to move on. Alright, we got our photo etch on both sides. Enough of this is done that we might as well paint it. Got the vent going and everything, so let's apply a little color. Alright, paint's on, and like the second I started applying the color, I realized, oh, 473, that's supposed to go right there. Dang it. So we'll get that slapped on there. It's not like it's a big deal just to touch that up. And then we'll do a little bit of the weathering on the windows, and then start on the forward funnel section right here and some of this photo etch back here. Real quick, in addition to the photo etch that I got to put in up here, check this out. So when you put these ledges on, the whole thing pushes down. It sits on top of this structure, which probably supports the radar that goes up here. And there it is. It sits in place, and it sits on top. I'm gonna zoom in here very carefully so you guys can see this. Yeah, that looks good. Alright, it's down. See that? What in the heck? And it's sitting right on top, right here. Well, I went, and that's not a problem. I didn't do anything wrong. I went online and checked out a bunch of people's photos of their ships that they built, and I noticed all of them had it sitting perfectly flat, just like this, nice and straight, and there was that little gap right down there as well. It's not just me, it's all the kits are this way. And it's not like that really bothers me or anything like that. I mean, I could just leave it and it'll be fine.
Alright, so we're going to go ahead and fast forward through some of this as I talk through how we put the PE on. Just going to go ahead and put a little bit of CA glue down, and then all you got to do is take the photo etch and touch it to those points, push down, make sure you have positive contact, and then you're good to go. Then we're going to go ahead and bend it into position. I did not anneal this PE before I started because I want to utilize the springiness of the metal to create a nice gentle curve around the railing. See that? How it goes and wraps around nicely. So what you do at this point is just take some more CA glue, apply it to the edge, and then hold your PE in position, the railing position, and it sets up, and the glue will hold it in place just like you want there. And all we gotta do is add a little bit more. It gets a little tricky towards the front because the turn becomes more abrupt, and there's a lot more resistance from the railing at this point, so you just gotta be patient, apply enough glue, and if you need to, use a little accelerator, and that'll help you out, and you'll get all set. Once that's done, just flip it over and repeat the same process on the other side. This one's a little bit shorter, so it works out really well for you. Once this is all done, then we can go ahead and move on to the railings, or I'm sorry, the handholds that you would use to move around in position. Sometimes they switch to tweezers just to help the whole process a little bit, keep your fingers out of the way. So it turned out nice. There's two ladders that go on both sides, so you just go ahead and drop both of those in. I dipped these in CA glue ahead of time. For this next spot right here, I put this handrail in position. Notice that I turned the piece sideways so that I could use gravity in my favor to help drop this thing in position. When you're done with all the handrails and the ladders and everything, you end up with a really nice piece, and I was really pleased with that whole process.
Alright, we're back after, for you guys must have been a microsecond here in the magic of television, but for me it's been at least 4 days, if not a week. So what we've done is gone ahead and got our photo etch on, got this mast off, painted up, and you saw the photo etch put on here at the top of the funnel. I'm going to go ahead and attach this, and that's good. And what we're going to do is leave this entire area here in the back unfinished. It'll get painted black later, and then I've got this piece that drops in up on top. It has its own photo etch that goes on there as well. Sorry about the air conditioning. Every time I go to speak, the air conditioning turns on. It's off the whole rest of the day. Anyway, so now what this will allow us to do is focus on some photo etch that goes back here on the back side of the funnel. We'll build that up, and it'll all get painted the same color. We'll come back in. We can paint this with an airbrush. This with an airbrush later, and then drop it in and hand brush the rest of this, and it won't be a factor, and we can finish up some of these details here. So let's start on that photo etch work now. Alright, we're going to start with this small piece right here that goes on the deck. I'm going to put some CA glue on the couple of contact points that we have. I'm going to get it installed, slid into position, and then I'm probably going to have to pick up the entire piece here and stand it on end so that this piece of photo etch doesn't feel like it could just fall down. I've got to try and get it level. My fingers are out of the way. So we'll put it in here. Okay. So now that we're up, so checking side to side, it looks like it's plumb. We want to make sure it's level. I'm using new super glue, which is great. The problem is it sticks like immediately. Okay. And it looks like the angle is pretty good there, like it's straight down. So this piece basically stuck right away, which is great. Over here though, you can see that this one is floating, so it needs to get bent in a little bit. Give it a little bit right there. Straighten this out. Okay, so now we've got some good contact points. Grab some CA glue on a toothpick, touch this area. That's a little bit excessive, but honestly at this point, when you put CA glue on a surface like this, try and flatten it out, try and spread it out, because what happens is, even though it's clear and it mostly disappears, it leaves little bumps, and when you go to paint over that later, you'll see it. But at the same time, if you don't build up enough CA glue for there to be a solid contact point, you're going to have problems. So now, one of the things that I'm going to do, so here's our very fragile piece of PA that is a deck that's going to support a bunch of heavier PA. I'm going to put a bunch of CA glue on the bottom side of this platform where it connects to the funnel. And I'm going to need some more. The reason I'm doing that is I want there to be strength on this piece of photo etch. I want this to not fall down on me, and I'd rather have a pile of CA glue forming a little lip underneath here that might not be very attractive, holding this thing in place that you're not going to see after the fact, than having a fragile piece up on top. So here, move this out of the way. Okay, so that's what we're left with here when we're done. And I've got to not knock that little piece, and so now we've got like an antenna here, we've got some ladders that go in, and all sorts of little stuff, and that's kind of the plan. Now we can install this and paint this whole thing and get all of this photo etch matching up and looking nice, and then press on to our part that goes up on top right here. Okay, it's the next day and we've got our photo etch up here on the back, not a big deal. I want to put, like I said, as much as I can on here before going back to paint, and there's this ladder that goes like this. Let's take a look at it. Drops right on there. And I've got it all the way down right here in the bottom, so it sits on the deck, but this deck is masked off. And I want to be able to paint it and have it installed and then be able to peel the tape away later. Fortunately, this is the kind of ladder that's got, I don't know if you could see this, there you go, the tongs that face in. So it doesn't have to sit on the deck. I could just glue it in slightly above the deck, and that will leave me room to get this tape off later and we can paint it. So let's glue this on. Alright, just dropped it in CA glue like so. Now there's a gap right down there, just enough room where if I'm careful I could peel the tape off and won't damage the ladder. So now we can paint all that up. Alright, so this is all painted up, and then you do the photo etch here, which I think I covered in the other video, for the funnel, and we'll just drop it in place like so. It slides up forward a little bit. Then there's one more piece of photo etch that goes around this whole thing, and that will get painted black. So what I'm going to do now though is paint the inside of all this black first, so that I'm not fighting with it later on, and then we'll glue it into position and then put the last little piece of photo etch on, and then we'll follow up with a brush. Well, it's been a hot minute here. Glue is, well, paint's drying, sorry. I need to put a little bit of glue up on here. I just brushed in the black paint and got this thing set up and ready to go. And I'll show you all on my reference photo where I got this from. I know some of you were like, why are you painting it like this? It didn't look this way, blah blah blah. No, I got pictures. I didn't just make it up. I know it seems like I make a lot of this up. Alright, so we're gonna let that dry and then we're gonna come back in with a brush and just paint in the rest of these details here. Okay, before I get too carried away with paint here, I forgot we've got this little piece of brass photo etch that goes up on top here. So, alright, we're gonna get a couple of drops of CA glue up here. I've elevated the whole stack so that it lays pretty flat on the surface here. Well, so that the top's flat. That way when this piece sets down, it's not inclined to fall one way or another. That'll work. Just like that. We want each piece to touch and so that there's a gap around the hand railing. And then you can get a tiny dab of CA glue, touch each of these little contact points. Good thing with black is most of this is going to disappear. And let it set up and then we'll move on to painting. Alright, here's the Missouri next to the Yorktown getting resupplied. But anyway, up here is our forward smokestack, and as you can see, it's just painted black along this edge right here. And then the rest of the antenna and stuff, this section is all painted the gray. So we're going to go ahead and just paint this in by brush. And I look real closely here, hopefully you can make that out. You can see that the little extra vents popping out of the back there, they are painted the gray also on the sides, and then obviously just the black is inside of the where the vent comes out. So we're going to duplicate that look right there. There we go. The paint's been painted. It's black. I did it by hand, touched up stuff. It's not perfectly perfect, but it's really close, and that's all that matters. Remember, this would have been painted by hand. I masked off the first one and airbrushed it. You can do the same thing. What I want to talk about now is this little area right up here in the front. See that? That's the Pontos little detail there. There's those 3 window panes right there. And that's so that when you come out of, I think it's CIC right up here, there's a little area. Anyway, you'd be right into the wind on the bow, and we want to put a piece of glass there. So what I've done is cut out a transparency that we're going to glue into place there just to make it more realistic. Alright, I'm going to try and do this so you can see it. What I'm using is some Testors clear glass glue, and it dries crystal clear, which is great. My concern is that you won't even see this at all, but you all know that I'm putting it on here, so that's the best we can do. Alright, here's my little transparency. And we're dropping it in just like that. That's it. Looks like the glue's made some contact. Fingers crossed that it stays in place. So moving on up, the conning tower here, primary conning tower level, I've installed, drilled the holes, put in the ladders. You guys know how to do that. I went ahead, this in the Trumpeter instructions, they want you to install this primary conning tower station. I don't know if this is where they do the primary steering. I'm not really sure. Anyway, you guys will let me know in the comments below. I glued this on now because there's a little spot right there where it bumps up against, and I was like, there's no reason why I guess that shouldn't be on there right now, so I can get it painted with everything else. So I went ahead and did that. And then this is the next level up. You can see I put filler in to fill the little holes. I glued this on earlier and I took it off because I realized it was in the way for putting in my ladder rungs. These right here, these 6 or whatever, it said optional in the Pontos instructions. Not sure if they're supposed to be there or not. I like them. I like the ladders, so I went ahead and threw them in place, even though I realized if it lets you up higher, there's nothing there's nowhere for you to really go. I'm not sure why they were optional, but whatever, I put them in place and my version's gonna have it. So anyway, that's glued up, so now, thank goodness the air conditioning shut off, I can take this piece off and continue figuring out where the photo etch needs to be, what levels need to go where, and what next to continue on for painting. I know we got some parts right here, so I gotta figure that out. Alright, here's another good one. The section that goes right up on top, got a couple of templates on here to drill the holes for the ladder rungs. But see that little spot right underneath there? So what's supposed to happen is, you're supposed to have this part together, like so, and then this is guidance for drilling a 0.5 millimeter hole right here, and that's because later on there's a piece of antenna that goes here. I think this is the support structure for it. The hole I'm drilling here might be a little too small. I don't really care. I just want it there. I think you guys can see that, so that I can drill it out later on the other side. So yeah, we're gonna do that, and I'll flip the template over and install it here, get those drilled in the hole over here as well. Yeah. Alright, our first piece of photo etch that's like pretty hardcore is gonna be this little station right here. Looking at it though, I was like, the best thing to do is probably just get it dropped into place and then add pieces to it. So I've positioned this whole structure to be horizontal, like you see, so that I could drop the photo etch onto it. This will allow me to make any adjustments if I need to, and the super glue can set up. And it made it easier to pre-bend this so that it looks right and ends up flat the way that we want. After this is in place, well, there's a kit piece that goes here, and then the actual antenna itself, and then the railing that goes on it. It's pretty fragile, so this is going to be an accomplishment. Okay, we'll see how this goes. This is the part. I'm going to call it just some kind of antenna, because I don't know what kind of antenna. It's part of the fire direction control system, I'm sure. It's a little crooked, but honestly at this point, just happy that it's on there. Now we have to get the railing around there. Alright, well that was fun. Railing's in place and this little antenna is all set up. So I guess if I was to make a suggestion to anyone, it would be save the big radar sender receiver part till after you put the railing on, because you kind of have to sneak the railing on up underneath it and then put it in place, which makes things a little bit difficult, but it's on there and that's all that matters. Alright, pressing on. So it's been a few days, but we're back. I've got this little railing area installed and then masked off. It's painted the deck blue like we want, and it's all ready to go, as good as it's going to be. Then we have the ship's, we'll call them horns. They're basically just two pieces of PE. One's turned brass, then you fold a little base, and that's it. Put them in place. I would like them up here to get painted right along with everything else. On the port side, you've got a larger one. This horn was a 3-piece affair. The base, a little part that goes on, a detail that goes on the back end of it, and that's it. I don't know a lot about these. Just that, you know, they're really convenient to have around. You know, if you're at a stop sign and the guy in front of you, or a stoplight more important, and the guy in front of you won't go, you know, you just give this a little tap, they'll get on their way. Not for everyone, but if you could swing it, pretty ideal. Obviously, no one waited for the mow. Okay, moving on. Alright, so as we move up, I went ahead and put on, you know, some photo etch here. There's the little ladder rungs, there's some little parts for the antennas that go on, but basically I was like, well, what do I want to do next? There's this big yard arms that go across, and the antenna goes up, and there's there's a little antenna that goes on the end of here, and I'm like, man, you know what? I'm just gonna knock all that stuff off. So I need to continue moving up and putting things together that I know I can touch, and then come back and put all these extra peripheral items on. So that's why we've moved along up here on the upper level of the conning tower. Doors on. Holes are drilled there for the ladders. Normally I put the ladder rungs in next, but there's this handy dandy little handrail here that I keep throwing all over the place that goes on around this edge, and then there's another one that goes around right up here. And so putting those on ahead of time is actually a better idea, and we'll come back to the ladder rungs afterwards. So we'll just slide this down and we'll get some CA glue on there and pop it in place so it looks, kind of like that. And then we'll do this next one up on top here. Then I'll come back and do the handrails, because otherwise I'd probably knock these off while trying to slide this down. So I'm just trying to point out, like, think about the order in which you put all of this stuff together. So I'm just gonna glue that up and we'll get to the next part. Alright, after copious amounts of messing around, we're gonna go ahead and put our Mark 38 gun director up on top here. And the astute observer will note that I just threw this together and didn't tell you anything about it. Notes and details about assembling this part are in video 13 on this playlist. At the end of this video, I'll include a direct link to it, and I'll put a link in the description down below so that you can go check that out. There's just so much stuff in this video we have to do. I can't cover the assembly of every project, but if you do watch that video, you will note that I pointed out that I lost one of these handrails up here, and so that's why this one looks different. I found this spare. It's not the same one, but it's close enough, and when it's all painted up, I don't think anyone's going to notice. And I'd rather have there be the wrong one up here than just have one be missing altogether. So alright, there's the Mark 38 gun director up on top, and this pretty much concludes what can be done like up tight and inside. There are a bunch of little pieces going here and we're done, but now I feel comfortable with putting this yard arm back here and starting on the rest of the antenna structure. It's a big huge photo etch project. So and then once that's in, then we'll put on these little pieces right here. We could go paint this right now too, that's another option, but I think I want to try and get more of this assembled so it's all ready to go. I think well, the reason I say we could go paint it is it would allow me to take this masking out before something's in the way, making it difficult to remove later. We'll have to look at that and make a judgment call and all that. So anyway, pressing on. Okay, this is the beginning of where things start to get difficult. Right here we're gonna put I'm just gonna call it the yard arm on for the antennas and our signals. Just a piece of photo etch, fold it up, and then you have to install a little styrene strip down in here per the instructions. Just center it up like that. Little CA glue. Now, oh, and I bumped that little ladder rung right there, so I'll straighten that out. Now we can begin to affix things to this. I'll put these little antenna guys on right there because this will block everything, and then we'll start the hard part. Okay, I'm going to attempt to do this so that you can see there is a microscopically small rail that sits along the top of this yard arm. There's a equally teeny tiny groove along the edge of the yard arm here for it to kind of sit in. So we're just going to take controlled amounts of CA glue, set it in those grooves, and we're going to hope for the best, honestly. Try and center it up. And drop it in position. Alright, so I've got contact on the left and the middle. We're up high here on the end. That's okay. It is leaning forward. You might not be able to see it in the camera, so before CA glue sets up, I'll tip it back a little bit. There you go. Hopefully you can see that. So on this side now, closest to you guys, there's a gap right underneath here. So we'll put a little more CA glue and I'll just push this down like that. Oh, it actually stuck a little bit. Good. So now it's super fragile, and you can leave it. I wouldn't. Get some more glue, and basically, while it's thin, where the railing meets the yard arm, there's a little gap or a little channel. Put some glue there because it's going to hide well when it's painted, and it's going to add strength to this in case you accidentally bump it. So that's how we get that on. This is not the hard part that I said that's coming up at all. This is the easy part. There's a bunch of little pieces that go on here now. I'm just going to drop those in place and then we'll get on to the next section. Alright, here's the little doodads on here. These are little triangle weather vane type of things that spin around, and a couple antennas. I discovered after I showed you in the last clip putting this on that I accidentally put this rail on backwards. This whole apparatus should be over here and these three things should be over there per the Pontos instructions. Now it says optional parts. I'm not going to try and rip this apart and fix that. It just doesn't matter. Anyway, those are the pieces that are there. So now we're going to move on to the hard part. So you have this mast and it goes in here, and I drilled out this little hole down here in the bottom so it seats in place, and I know that I can get it to go straight, but there's a ton of stuff that has to happen up here, and the idea is that I guess I'm gonna put this in a vise and affix it to it so that I can take the whole thing and drop it down in here. At least that's what I'm telling myself I'm gonna do. Hopefully I don't regret that decision, and then we can paint everything. So, and I could still, I think, get in here easily enough to remove my masking tape. So yeah, let's start with the big radar antenna. That's what I'm going to call it anyway.